Hello, learners. Hope that you are keeping well. Today's lesson is on economic geography, and we're going to focus on the factors favoring. Okay, that means the advantages, or it actually encourages industrial development, and factors hindering, factors that create obstacles towards industrial development. So our main focus, yes, is on those things based on industrial development in specific reference to South Africa. Okay, now let's get going. Right, of course, we look at the curriculum first. And very clearly, we're looking at the factors favoring and the factors hindering. All right. So we will look at factors favoring like raw materials, labor supply, water supply, energy supply, transport, political intervention, competition, and trade. Right. Now, you will notice as I'm going through the factors hindering that there are some similar factors. Okay. Or the factors are the same, rather. Okay. So we need to be careful when we study these sections where the factors are same for hindering and favoring. But of course, there'll be different points. So when you answering a question, all right, please be careful. If the question says a factor that's having a negative impact on industrial development, then you focus on the negative aspects. Don't just give it general. So it's so important when it comes to sections like this to focus on what the question wants. Like we look at the factors hindering, okay? And we will go through the factors here. And the first one, of course, is overconcentration of industries in one area. Then you look at transport comes in again. Can you see favor and hinder? Of course, air pollution. Then you look at labor supply, water supply, raw materials, political interference, competition and trade. All right. All these factors are the same. So we have to put it into context of the question itself. Okay, so let's get going with the content. All right, now let's look at the factors favoring industrial development. And the first one that have popped up here is raw materials. Okay, we are very gifted in our country, learners. We have a variety of raw materials, and not just a variety, we have a lot of it. Okay, can you see? Mining produces a lot of products and minerals. Of course, it's essential for mining, for manufacturing rather, not mining. All right, because you need raw materials, you need iron ore, you need or coal for power, iron ore to produce iron and steel to manufacture cars. And imagine having it in your own country. All right, what a brilliant thing that we don't have to import these expensive commodities, saving so much money. Right? If you look at this little sketch here, or map rather, and you look at the variety of raw materials that are mined, all right, or products, or minerals. It's massive from gold, platinum, lead, manganese, nickel, titanium, vanadium, some names you won't even know. You understand? All right, you're not geologists, and so am I. I'm not a geologist, but it's a variety. And look at the amount of mining that's being done. It's massive. So we have enough mining raw materials. All right, that's not all. Okay, let's look at the other raw materials. Like, for instance, the different climate conditions here allow for a variety of agricultural products. A variety. Okay, now look at this. This is the agriculture. Okay, it's massive learners. It's massive in the sense that we have your grapes, etc., growing in here for the wine industries because of the Mediterranean climate. If you look at the subtropical climate around the coastal regions of KwaZulu Natal, sugarcane is grown there, maize in these areas, livestock that's suitable with our pasture lands. And this again gives us so much agricultural raw materials, okay, that come through for production and manufacturing. So we favor that creates a variety of industries. All right, in our country can have different types of industries because of the raw materials. And of course, a large industrial sector. Brilliant in terms of our country. All right, let's go on. That's one factor that favors. Let's look at labor supply. All right, now we have a large labor force available. All right, you can see here a quarter of the labor force cannot find a job. So that's how many people we have that can work. So we have a large labor force. A point to note, if we say 51% of our labor force have not completed matric, so what does this mean? A large part of our labor is unskilled, all right, in terms of completion. Okay, maybe some of them have done little uh, courses, etc. Let's be fair on that. Okay, so we could have some people, but generally it's an indication of a large amount being unskilled. Now, please don't think unskilled labor is not important. There are semi-skilled and unskilled so-called jobs, all right, that are available and are necessary also. But what happens when we have a lack of skilled labor? We then take from skilled labor from other countries. Okay, that's not the best sign for us. Okay, because what's happening to the well-being of our people, the training, the skills that can improve our economy and our people's quality of life, etc. You understand? So unfortunately, it's a factor hindering, and of course, industries will end up paying more for this labor that comes from other countries, etc. In general, obviously. Okay, when it comes to skilled labor. So it can be a factor hindering industrial development. Can you see? Already labor is favoring in terms of the supply, but in terms of the skills, it's a factor that can hinder. Okay. Now, if I can move my face a bit. All right. So one thing we do note that the number of skilled workers is actually in the country is actually increasing. And this is due to things like government and private sector initiatives. They are coming in. Government is putting in various steps. Private sector is coming in with subsidies, etc. You understand, sponsoring certain projects. And the number of skilled laborers or workers are increasing in our country. So in the future, we have a better prospect. You understand? We don't have to take so many people from other countries to come and work here at higher costs, etc. We've got our own people and can develop our own people in terms of that. So it's a factor that favors and hinders in terms of industrial development. Okay, water supply. Okay, we have sufficient water supply available. You understand? Now, I'm aware that we have a water issue regarding South Africa in terms of the amount of rainfall, etc. But we have taken steps, which is brilliant. All right. Like we take here in areas where there are challenges. Okay. There are challenges. Water supply with water supply. You understand? Gauteng does not get much rainfall in winter, etc. And it's such a large industrial region. Water projects have been implemented, like the water transfer schemes you studied in grade 11 have been implemented. Okay, what happens? You take water from a place that has uh, a large amount and they can do with the less, I wouldn't say less water, but they have more than what they actually need. So water is transferred from one place to the next, like from the KwaZulu Natal to Gauteng. In this case, it's the Lesotho Highlands water being transferred to Gauteng. So we've taken initiatives and we've brought in water to areas that may have challenges relating to water supply. So it's a positive factor. It's favoring industrial development in areas like Gauteng, etc. All right, energy supply. All right. We know we have large amounts of coal. When you did mining, you would have picked that up in economic geography earlier on with large power stations. So we have a good supply of energy. Can you see we have large coal supplies? We have power stations right through, okay, coal power stations from ESCOM across the country, making it huge. All right. I know some of you may be laughing down there, and if teachers are on this thing also, they would be laughing a bit. All right, because it must be noted that in recent years, load shedding and higher costs of energy have had a negative impact on the industries. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean we don't have the potential to supply energy. I suppose things like old infrastructure giving up, that factor of corruption, etc. Okay, and I hope that if the people in power can sort these issues out, you understand, then we shouldn't have an energy problem. Okay, I know they're looking at more alternative sources, environmentally friendly energy sources, etc. And of course, that's going to help our supply, like solar energy, etc. Excuse me. So those things are actually very good also. But we do have the potential of a good energy supply in this country. Okay? Transport. We have a very good transport network. All right. We have well developed road and railway networks. Look at the road networks here, Lennis. Brilliant. Brilliant. Connectivity around the whole region. All these roads and alternate routes, etc. That's not all. Look at the rail. Beautiful, connecting the area. So this is a definite positive. International airports across the country, harbors. All right, we lucky we surrounded by the ocean on three sides, so we have our harbors, ports all around. So brilliant. Remember, this is needed for industries. A cheaper transport of importing some maybe materials that we need, you understand, in terms of the country, okay, and exporting through harbors, etc. Cheap rail movement. So it's brilliant. It's going to encourage uh, industries in South Africa. All right, it allows for efficient transport of raw materials, all right, to industries because that's important, especially if it's bulky raw materials, etc. Want it quick to get to the industry, and the distribution of to the the domestic and international markets. All right, that's what we need. These products to go out effectively, quickly, and especially with the international markets through the sea, etc. Or the it's much cheaper, especially with bulky goods. So we have another positive issue here in terms of transport. All right, political intervention. Now we must note here it favors or hinders. How is that possible? Let's take the old system that was not very nice in our country. All right. Yeah, most in apartheid, most, and that should be an A, learners. I'm being naughty. I hope the English teachers are not watching this, or the history teachers, they'll kill me. Okay, all right. Most industrial developments were focused on a few areas. All right, you look at it here, we had 80% or more than 80% of our industries were focused in these few areas. Gauteng, which is a PWV, Durban, Pinetown in KwaZulu Natal, P. Uitenhage in Eastern Cape, all right, and the Southwestern Cape in the Western Cape. Few areas. All right, what happened to the rest of the areas? All these other areas, learners, hardly had much industrial development. So in those areas, it was hindered. Okay. And of course, sanctions were imposed on South Africa because people well, didn't like what was happening in South Africa, where black communities were treated badly and the things were manipulated to favor certain people. Okay, so people didn't like that. So sanctions, so we couldn't sell to many people, isn't it? And we also couldn't buy certain essential things that we needed for production, so it was a factor hindering. Can you see that? But on the other hand, we take democracy. And what did democracy do? It encouraged development of industries to be spread across the country. And there were projects like the industrial development zones, okay, and spatial development issues. Now, do not get concerned. What is this? Okay, I don't want to teach it in this presentation and do it again in more detail. We will come across these ones, okay, where it spread development across. As I said, it will be discussed later in economic geography. Now, look at this, learners. All right, this is your industrial development zones. Look how spread it is across the country where there's potential. You understand? Brilliant. Development, industrial development are happening across. Look at these spatial initiatives. You will discuss them later in detail. All across the country. That's what you need to know now. That these two allowed and favored industrial development across the country compared to this one, where the main focus was in just few areas of the country. So can you see political intervention can favor and hinder competition and trade? Now there's various ways that we could look at it. All right. I'm looking at it in terms of African trade with Africa, and I'm looking at trade with countries outside Africa, the other part of the global economy. So I will look at it here and say it favors or hinders. All right, favors or hinders development. All right, now let's look at how it can be both ways. Now let's look at South Africa in terms of Africa. All right, we say South Africa is more competitive in Africa. Exports are far more than imports. If you look at this one, all right, the blue represents exports, the brown represents imports, and we can see the exports from South Africa, the selling from South Africa is huge compared to what we importing. So we're very competitive. Our trade is very strong. So it favors our trade in Africa. But the rest of the global markets, let's use China as an example here, learners. The red talks about imports that we have from China, and the blue talks about exports. And yeah, what do you see now? The imports are far higher than the exports. We have challenges competing against countries like China. The goods, they can reduce the prices, they are cheaper, the labor supply is cheaper, you understand, the labor costs are cheaper. We have a struggle to compete there. So what happens in terms of trading with places like China or other parts of the world outside Africa? It is not the best, and it could be a factor that hinders development. Okay, so less competitive on a global market outside Africa. And he said where China imports are far more than exports. Can you see that, learners? Completely the opposite. All right, not very healthy for us. So this is one way of looking at how it can be favor or hinder. But please, again, look at your resources. These presentations your teachers will give you, gives you the idea about how it can be both ways. Look at what your resource in an assessment or exam wants from you. Be specific to that. Eh? I know I say that 100 times, but it's necessary, learners. All right. Now, let's look at factors hindering. And I think you must note again labor supply, political interference, competition, and trade, all right, have been discussed under factors favoring. The factors hindering have also been discussed there, learners. So, what happens here is it makes a direct comparison already. So, please note that it's there. All right, let's look at over concentration as a factor limiting. Over concentration, obviously, of industries. So, over concentration of industries in core industrial regions, example core industrial regions, leads to strain on resources, okay, like water supply, power supply, which definitely hampers industrial development, all right. And the second thing, the strain on the transport infrastructure. Okay, you can see this, learners. Whoa, this is quite a regular sight in Gauteng around the Johannesburg area, Pretoria area. It jams and it has to have a strain on the development or limit the development of areas. Okay, in terms of, let's just focus first. Maybe I want to emphasize the strain on transport infrastructure. Okay, as the first factor. When I say strain on transport infrastructure creates or limits development. Imagine every day your workers are stuck in transport, and if there's a traffic jam, they are later to work. Production is affected, right? It hinders industrial development. Imagine your trucks, etc., bringing in raw materials, taking out goods. Okay, that also slows down learners. All right, and that hinders industrial development. Okay, and then the other thing we also point out is that it limited development in other areas by over concentrating in one area, as I showed you with those things about the Gauteng and the Durban Pinetown. Other areas didn't get much development. Okay, so limitations on that happened. So it's a factor that hinders. Okay, let's look at transport. Whoa, we have transport again, but we have such beautiful road networks, etc. Okay, what could be factors? We're getting a little more specific here now, learners. We look at the PWV, the Pretoria Witwatersrand region, which is Gauteng. Right there, we have it down here. Can you see it there? Okay, now we have a problem. It produces bulk goods. All right, so you can't just take bulk goods made from iron and steel or iron and steel itself and use aeroplanes to transport it. It's too expensive, it's not even viable. So it has to be transported if it's going to other countries, etc., via ship. Okay, but we have a problem here. Look at the distance of Gauteng towards harbors like Durban, Richards Bay, etc. There's huge distances. So what happens? Okay, it's far from harbors, creating more expenses. All right. Can you see that? So that is a factor hindering to a certain extent. Okay, because of the distances. All right, and it hinders in certain areas like Gauteng. Then again, I'm repeating myself here. I know over concentration of industries in core industrial regions, again, as I said, leads to strain on transport, infrastructure, and impacts negatively on the production and distribution of products. Okay, so this, I know it's more based on overconcentration, but it involves the transport networks. Okay, that's involved there. All right, I've repeated that point. Let's go on. Air pollution. You know, heavy industries. All right, and you know the air pollution. And I know when we ask you a question, uh, factors hindering, talk about air pollution, and then you say air pollution create heavy industries create a lot of air pollution. Okay, and then I say, so what? What if it creates a lot of air pollution? How does it hinder industrial development? And that's what we need to focus on, learners. All right, we are geographers. We think critically. We are brilliant. So that doesn't really answer the question. I've seen this being mentioned in many cases. Factors hindering air pollution because industries cause a lot. How? And this is where we need to answer. I'm just going to give you one perspective. Laws like the Air Quality Act, okay, stipulate rules to industries regarding reduction of pollution. And it's getting bigger. You know, climate change is a reality. Okay, various climate summits, I don't want to go into detail on that, are stipulating, and countries are joining in and they're making laws, which is a very good thing, learners. As I said, it's necessary for the well being of South Africa and its people. It's very necessary. But lots of industrial, I'm not saying all of them, lots of industrialists, they actually want to make huge profits. You understand? And suddenly there's rules, and it may now result in them creating additional costs for them because now they have to follow certain rules. It may limit them. And what happens after that? These multi corporations, they say, whoa, we may move from this country or from this province to another place where the rules are less strict. Okay, so it actually discourages. Oh, I'm going to put a factory, but this South Africa, this place of South Africa, you understand, has got very strict rules. So I'm not going to put it there. I'll put it somewhere else in the country, or I'll put it in another country. You understand, which is more relaxed, so I can pollute as much as I want to. You understand? And I will get good profits. So it doesn't have to be a company from overseas also, or from the rest, or from other countries. I shouldn't just be mentioning overseas. All right, there's countries that are not overseas in comparison to us. Uh, it doesn't only be them, it could be South African companies that decide, oh, I'm going somewhere else. So it could move from province to province to other countries to other regions. Okay, and that could hinder development. Yet it's actually a very good thing. All right. So that is how we answer air pollution. Not that it just creates a lot of pollution. So what? All right. Learners, can you see that? Okay, you must be specific. Okay, water supply. Whoa. What about water supply now? It could be regional hindering, you understand, or specific part of the country that gets hindered. Like, let's look at this lack of proper water supply or rainfall on a large part of the western section of South Africa. You've done this in climate also, okay? Of South Africa limits industrial development there. And from all the maps you see, industrial development is limited. There is industrial development on some parts. Of course, closer to the coast on the west, there's the harbour, etc., encouraging it, but parts of it is limited due to water. So those regions may have water supply as a hindrance towards industrial development. All right. And of course, another fact is regular droughts experienced in South Africa. And one of the main factors here that could hinder is it limits raw materials. Example, agricultural raw materials. This is a drought situation. And you know already, we've discussed it on various occasions, the importance of the raw materials. You understand? We don't have to get it from somewhere else. And if agricultural raw materials, like what you see on this little picture, all right, is damage due to drought, okay, we actually has a factor that hinders, and it's related to water supply. There are various things also, but these are some of the main issues. Okay, then raw materials. Now, whoa, we have such a large amount of raw materials. How can it be a factor that hinders? All right, now let's look at it here. Most of the raw materials that are mined are located where? On the northeastern section, partly in the central section here also, but northeastern section of South Africa. So it'll encourage lots of industrial development there, right? But it creates challenges for areas in the south. Can you see where's all the minerals here? Okay, and look at here, or the products that are mined, etc. Very little or nothing in some places. So this actually creates major challenges. Example, if you look at the coal, there's limited or no coal in parts of the areas, which creates energy challenges for the south. Okay, that is why we have the Koeberg nuclear power station, all right, that's found in the Western Cape. Okay, because they don't have much coal supply. The cost of other energies are expensive because it travels great distances. All right, or we have to get it, the coal, etc., from distances or supply. Okay, imagine the iron ore, which is limited here, and we need it to produce in these areas. So, although the Southwestern Cape Industrial Region is huge, they do have challenges which could hinder development. Maybe not so much in the Southwestern Cape area, which is near the harbor, which can promote things. All right, but in these other regions in the south, etc., part of it in the west also, that could create problems. So raw materials are limited there. That could create serious challenges in terms of hindering industrial development. Okay, learners, I think we've covered a lot on these two factors. Remember, once again, apply it properly to what the question wants. In the favor, look at the raw materials that are given there. Also, we're going to use these factors when we deal with the section of core industrial regions of South Africa. It's going to pop up there, and that is where we're going to apply these concepts, all right, of favoring and hindering, and see how it promotes industrial development specifically in those areas. All the best, learners.